This weekend, the Octagon touches down at the Honda Center in Anaheim, California for UFC 298 with a headlining featherweight title fight between Alexander Volkanovski and Ilia Topuria. With so much going on in the MMA world right now, with the anticipation and speculation surrounding a big fight announcement for UFC 300, and with UFC 299 being right around the corner with an absolutely stacked card set to go down in Miami next month, the 298 co-main event between Robert Whittaker and Paulo Costa has completely flown under the radar, which personally, I'm totally okay with. In this day and age of the sport, with the overexposure of the fighters and the self-promotion, the endless news cycle that's primarily made up of a great deal of nonsense, and all the social media hoopla that goes along with the promotion of a fight, Robert Whittaker versus Paulo Costa is completely void of any of that noise. The co-main event this weekend harkens back to the years before Chael Sonnen, before Conor McGregor, when it was the fight itself that was the main attraction and where fans derived all the entertainment from. That's not to say that there won't be the forced, phony back and forth yelling over each other at the press conference thing going down between these two as we get into fight week, but all that aside, all that's left is putting these two top-tier middleweights in the cage and seeing what happens when they clash. And I'm thinking we're in for a very interesting contest when the cage door shuts on Saturday night. Of course, you can never know anything for sure until the fight actually goes down, but I think this one has the high probability of fireworks. I'm not a betting man myself, and I don't typically look at the odds of a fight going into it, but I figured Whittaker would be a favorite going into this one. He is, and it's certainly for good reason. But it's really easy to get caught up in everything but what actually goes on inside the cage when trying to assess a fight. So for this one, I put down Twitter, picked up Fight Pass, and watched most of Whittaker and Costa's UFC fights just to see what I'd come away with. There's a degree of uncertainty about what version will show up come fight night, but when you look closely at this matchup, you'll see he has a lot going for him here. People consider Costa to be a heavy power puncher, and that's exactly what he is. But it's his rear leg body kick that's one of his most utilized weapons in his arsenal. They are fast, technical, and very heavy. It's this very kick that has played a major role in putting his opponents on the back foot, allowing him to move forward with his patented big power punches. Speaking of his boxing, for such a big muscle-bound guy, he has the ability to put out a high volume over the course of 3 or 5 rounds if he can manage to be the one pushing forward. And if he can be successful in backing you up into the cage, he executes technically beautiful 3 and 4 point combinations where he mixes up cracking you up high and digging into the body with fight-ending intentions. Upon rewatching his fights, he is way more fluid than I remember. While the technique and the speed and the combos are great, he does like to swing kind of wildly and sometimes a little loopy, which will present an opportunity for Whittaker to land something significant with his darting in and darting out style. But another positive for the big man is that upon rewatching all his fights, I was surprised at how good his takedown defense was. He defends the takedowns more often than not, and the times that he does get taken down, he pops up very quickly to bring the fight back to an upright battle. Whittaker has very good distance control and has very well-timed and well-executed double-leg takedowns he hits when he wants to. But another one of Costa's good qualities is his ability to do significant damage in the scrambles and when in those positions in between the takedowns. You can never be too safe in any position on the ground with him because Costa has a good ability to fire off hard, impactful shots with ferocity from all different types of angles. In Whittaker's last fight against DDP, when the fight ended up on the ground, DDP did a lot of significant damage to Whittaker when he was on the bottom. If Paulo Costa is able to get in that same position with some time on the clock, I'm not sure Whittaker's going to be able to get out of there. And aside from all the technical aspects of what the matchup looks like, a whole other element to this thing is that, at least from the outside looking in, taking into account what history has shown us with other fighters in the past who peak at certain times in their careers, I find myself questioning whether or not fighting is the most important thing in Whittaker's life right now. And by no means is that a criticism. I love and appreciate Whittaker as much as the next person. And I'm not suggesting that he's physically past his prime or that he's showing any signs of diminished durability. I just wonder if it's even physically possible to maintain the desire needed to kick the ass of the elite in this sport being this deep into his career. After being in the UFC for 12 years now, already having been a UFC champion at the top of the mountain, and now finding himself just trying to reclimb that mountain again. Whereas you have to think Paulo Costa is absolutely chomping at the bit for the opportunity that comes with this fight this weekend. He hasn't reached the top of the mountain yet, and with the landscape of the middleweight title picture right now being pretty wide open, an impressive win over a former champion could very well catapult him into a title shot for his next fight. And although the fight didn't take place because of the infection in his elbow, you have to remember that he did step up to take on the boogeyman, that's Khamzat Chimaev, when many apparently wanted nothing to do with it, which speaks volumes about the belief in himself and the chances he's willing to take. And above all else, Sometimes in this game, being the hungrier fighter with more desire than their opponent can supersede any disparity in skill set. And I feel as though this is what we could be looking at this UFC 298 co-main event. You'd be crazy to count out Robert Whittaker, especially against someone who has been inactive as Paulo Costa. But with his ability and willingness to absorb damage to give damage, and how close he is to earning the biggest opportunity of his career this weekend, I think it would be smart to keep a close eye on Paulo Costa this weekend. Because despite the fact he's in a fight with very little hype behind it, he quietly finds himself in a prime position to steal the show.